everybody. Welcome to the Legislative District 16 Candidates Forum. My name is Barbara Preston. I'm editor of the Montgomery News and a proud sponsor of this event. The Montgomery News is one of the few remaining independent newspapers left in New Jersey. We're a monthly newspaper, and we mail 23,000 newspapers first class to all homes in Montgomery Township, Rocky Hill, and parts of Princeton, Hopewell, Hillsborough, and Franklin Township. One of our key goals is to provide fair and unbiased coverage of the news in our community. This includes equal coverage for candidates, each candidate running for office. We are delighted to partner with the League of Women Voters who share this vision. They did most of the legwork for this event and have strict rules in place to ensure that each candidate has equal time to answer each question. Also, the moderator is not even a resident of Legislative District 16, so she does not vote for any of these candidates just to avoid the appearance of a conflict or a bias. We hope that this forum will help our visitors and our viewers to select the best candidates. And we thank each of the candidates on this stage for participating tonight, and I wish you each best of luck. We also thank Princeton Community Television for videotaping this event live. And we thank Raritan Valley Community College for hosting us here tonight.
I'm Sandy Matson. I happen to actually live in the 23rd Legislative District, and I'm the moderator for this forum. You've already heard the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political nonprofit, and we work to empower voters and defend democracy, and we never support or oppose candidates for office or political parties. So with that sort of definition behind us, a few words about the format, and then we will start. I'll introduce the candidates in just a moment. Each candidate, I have some questions from you. I have questions that were submitted online, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question, and then 30 seconds for a rebuttal if they so choose. Our timekeeper is Madison Pitts, who is sitting right in the front. She has actually the hardest job here, I guess, after the candidates, because 90 seconds and 30 seconds comes mighty fast. And as I said to her, you really can't listen to the candidates. You got to be watching your clock all the time. The forum is being live streamed by Princeton TV, and the videotape will be rebroadcast later. So we hope to reach many more people than we have actually sitting here tonight. So the candidates for the 16th Legislative District, on my far right is Roy Fryman, Democrat. Next to him is Sadaf Jaffer, also a Democrat running for the 16th Legislative District. Next is Joseph Lukac, the one Republican candidate, and Vincent Panico is the second candidate. So with that, the candidates drew for opening remarks, and Mr. Panico will go first, 90 seconds.
Thank you, Ms. Matson. Good evening. I'm running for Assembly because LD 16 needs someone in touch with Central Jersey. I'm born and raised in Central New Jersey. I earned my associate's right here at Raritan Valley, my bachelor's from Rider University, and my master's from Auburn University in Montgomery. In 2008, I started my first business in Central New Jersey. Since then, I have worked for small and medium businesses across the state, employing neighbors and friends. I bought my first house when I was 25 years old, and I've lived the struggle of being a young adult trying to plant roots in New Jersey. I see my friends who are in their 20s and low 30s still living at their parents' house because they can't afford to live in Roy Fryman's New Jersey. I'm running for the legislature because I've been able to make a difference on the school board. Over the past 9 years, I've served on local board of education with the most recent 4 as board president. During that time, we've gone debt-free while expanding services, settled the teacher contract before it expired, and protected our staff and students through calculated measures to avoid any COVID outbreaks. I don't do it for personal interest. I don't have any kids in the district. I do it because I care. I care about New Jersey, I care about my neighbors, and I care about our future. Roy Fryman, though, he won't stand up for his neighbors. Over the last 4 years, Hillsborough School District, his hometown, has lost $6.4 million in state funding. He could have voted no, but instead, he hid under his desk like a coward and abstained. Roy won't fight for his own neighbors, so what makes you think he's going to fight for you?
Thank you. Mr. Fryman.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I also want to extend my thanks to the League of Women Voters, for Raritan Valley Community College for hosting this, and for those of you that are watching. I really applaud this opportunity to be here because it expands civil engagement, and getting more people involved is very, very important. It has been an honor to serve in the 16th District for the past 4 years. I've been working with my colleagues to make New Jersey more affordable and more accessible and a fairer place to live for everyone over those past 4 years. As we are recovering from COVID, I don't believe that getting back to where we were before is good enough. To me, that is the minimum standard. That is a baseline of where we need to build off of. That's why in Trenton, I have focused on getting millions of dollars of financial support for our small businesses, while at the same time easing their regulations so they can adjust and adapt to the pandemic. That is why I've secured funding for our schools so children will have the resources, including mental health services, so they can achieve their full potential. That is why I co-sponsored the legislation that struck down the Christie-era cuts for women's health care. And that is why I'm the author of the single largest debt reduction in state history. I thank you for your support, and I look forward to tonight's debate.
Thank you. Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for having this debate tonight, and for everybody coming out tonight, and also Raritan Valley College and the surrounding community. I was born and raised in Manville, New Jersey. I still live there with my wife and my 3 children. I come from a middle-class, hardworking family, and I know what working families go through on a day-to-day basis to keep a roof over their heads and provide the basic needs their families need. After graduating high school, I served proudly in the Army Combat Engineers for 12 years, honorably, and have been a union electrician with the IBEW Local 102 for the last 27 years. I served 1 term on the Manville School Board and am currently serving my 2nd term on the Manville Borough Council. Every one of us has witnessed Roy Fryman and his running mates rubber stamp the status quo wherever they've been and served, raising taxes on the middle class and driving working families and businesses out of New Jersey for far too long. The residents of New Jersey deserve better leadership. They deserve to be represented by efficient and effective problem solvers, not people who practice poor judgment and lack action. During the pandemic, we have all witnessed just how badly they have failed you, the ones who pay to keep the lights running. You're also paying for their mistakes. They have proven time and again through their repeated blunders that the last year and 9 months, they're not up to the task of dealing with the many needs our state has.
Time.
Thank you.
Continue to hold it up, just so they may not see it. Okay. Dr. Jaffer.
Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Montgomery News, Princeton Community Television, and Raritan Valley Community College for hosting us tonight. I'm Sadaf Jaffer, and I hope to earn your vote for General Assembly in Legislative District 16. I'm running for Assembly to continue my life's work, which is to serve the community and make positive change. I'm a researcher at Princeton University, and I have served for 2 terms as mayor of Montgomery Township. As a public servant, I focus on community building, connecting residents with resources they need, and making sure all voices are heard. As mayor, I work to ensure the safety of Montgomery Township residents during the COVID-19 pandemic, enabling our town to take swift action and keep infection rates low. My experience as a government official and scholar have prepared me to fight tough battles for this district. As a member of the Assembly, I will work to guarantee as much prosperity as I can for everyone in this district by pursuing an economic recovery that creates green jobs, promotes civil and human rights, and empowers an inclusive public health approach to COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now start the questions, and I can assure you I have more questions than I can get through. So just so you, if I don't read your question, it is only for that reason. This will go first to Mr. Fryman. Will you support ending college tuition and provide the funding to do so?
I think I would actually expand that question to what do we do to help people succeed and train for careers? I don't think college funding, college unto itself is a career path that everyone should take. And I don't think it's appropriate for all individuals. So your question might be better off asked of saying, would I support helping people who are graduating from high school prepare for careers, including college funding? And the answer is yes, we have to make it easier and more affordable for people to prepare. There is economics associated with what you can do and how fast you can do it. But we absolutely, as government, should not have students, regardless of whether they're training for a trade school or training for going through their college degree, to come out with this huge burden of debt. We have to make that more affordable for everyone. So I do support ways of getting there, but I think it should be broader than just those interested in seeking a four-year degree or beyond.
Dr. Jaffer?
So as a college professor, obviously higher education is very dear to my heart, but I also came from a middle-class background. There was nothing to guarantee that I would have access to the types of institutions I was able to attend. And that was because of scholarships, because of support that I was able to gain. But I know that I'm of a privileged minority, and that's not fair. Everyone should have access to high-quality higher education. New Jersey takes pride in the fact that we have the #1 public school system in the country, and that's wonderful for K through 12 education. But I do think that we need to provide that opportunity for higher education as well. And there are various paths that people can take, should take, but as a scholar of the humanities, I don't think that it's all about what career you're going to go into. It's about examining the world around you, having an understanding of how to tell fact from fiction, how to know if what you're being told is actually based in research or not. We've seen the deficits in our country over this past year of people who just don't know who to trust. They don't know if they should trust public health officials or someone else when it comes to taking safety precautions. And we need to change that. So if we want to have a society that focuses on critical thinking, in which we're all educated, we all understand the world around us, I do think that we should support higher education for anyone who wants to pursue that path. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. I didn't go to college. Like I said, I worked for the IBEW Local 102, but I went into the Army and I learned trade through there and through VOTEC in Somerset County here. My son, he started off his college career in Raritan Valley, and he's at Rutgers right now finishing up his last year at Rutgers. So I see the bills right in front of me every month, what it's going to cost and what it's going to. Every student that I know of in those colleges, in any college, are going to graduate and have a mountain of debt that they're most likely never going to be able to climb and get over. There's just no way. There should be lower interest loans if we had to go to that point first. Very low interest, because some of the interest on the loans right now that I'm looking at for some of the kids that we've been helping out in Manville with their school funding, it's just it's gonna be like owing $500,000 by the time they're done, and that's not fair. We teach our kids. When I was on the school board, I watched. We teach our kids from first grade all the way up, go to college to get a degree. And I agree wholeheartedly that college isn't for everyone. But to the kids that get to college, they shouldn't have this brick wall as soon as they graduate. They need a hand on it. We have to come up with a solution, a lot better than what we've been doing now to give our kids a brighter future once they graduate college and get on with their career and their life. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you. Education's my core. I love education. I've been on the school board for 9 years now. But to say that everybody needs to go to college is the wrong thing, like my colleagues have said. Joe Lukac, you just said you went to Somerset County Road Technical School, right? And I heard Mr. Fryman say that he supports multiple pathways, both to career and to college. But over the last 4 years, he's cut almost $1 million from the very school that Joe Lukac went to. So it's hard to say that you're prioritizing multiple pathways when you continue to cut the funding that allows people to exceed. I am about education. I'm here because I love education, and it's been my history and my experience. I've been a professor at this very school that you're all sitting in today. I've sat in this room and helped professors here develop new curricular pathways to graduating from Raritan Valley. Everyone needs the opportunity to go to college. Private-public partnerships can get us there. What we don't need are legislators in Trenton like Roy Fryman who continue to cut funding for our most valuable asset in New Jersey, and that's our future. If you elect our opponents this November, you will continue to see cuts across the board to what is most important in New Jersey. Thank you.
Does anyone wish to rebut? All right, seeing none, the next question will go first to Dr. Jaffer. How important do you believe diverse representation is in government? And what would be your plans to increase, if you believe it's important, what would be your plans to increase participation of classically marginalized communities?
Thank you so much. I think diversity is extremely important in politics. It's the only way that we can make decisions that represent the best interest of everyone. I actually first got interested and involved in politics when I heard that the United States was 75th in the world in terms of women's representation in politics. And that, I thought, was a shame. That's not where we should be. We should be way ahead of other countries. And so I decided to run because if I want other women to run, I felt I needed to run as well and be that example. And I will say that I've seen so many times that it does make a difference. During the pandemic, I had multiple women in Montgomery from different racial and ethnic backgrounds come to me and let me know that they were experiencing domestic violence. And so I would try to get them the resources they needed. We tried to put those resources front and center in our COVID response. And I often asked myself, if I was a man serving as mayor, would they have felt as comfortable coming to me? I don't know, but I do think that there is a connection in the sense of comfort when there is someone who is like you in office. Similarly, there have been times when immigrant groups have felt more comfortable coming to me and letting me know about some of their fears or their concerns. In Montgomery, on my first year in local government, there was an anti-Muslim bias crime where someone left pork on a Muslim family's car. And we started a group called Montgomery Mosaic to talk about anti-Black racism, anti-immigrant violence, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and how to confront it. And we've built so many connections through that, and it's made our community more resilient, stronger, and more connected. And that's what I hope that we see throughout the state. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac?
Thank you. As I said before, I grew up in Manville, and when we were growing up, my mom was a single mother, 3 kids, working 3 jobs, so we were taught a lot better. We didn't see color. We didn't see anything. We were told everybody next to you and in front of you and behind you are the same exact as you are. And we were brought up in that respectful environment, and I don't forget it. As a councilman, as an Army man, when we were in the Army, everyone's a brother and a sister there. We're one team because we know we have to rely on each other's lives to hopefully survive any kind of combat or any situation. When I was on the school board in Manville, we had a very big issue, and one of the reasons why I ran originally was because of bullying. Bullying because of race, bullying because of overweightness, bullying because of everything and anything you'll name it under the bully tent. And I fought to put a stop to it. We challenged our administrators and our teachers to come up with new and innovative programs to stop bullying. We got Stomp Out involved. We did a lot of stuff with the kids. We did after-school programs on it, and the kids accepted it. Now, whether the kids were learning it at home or not, we just can't say. But We started addressing it in Manville, and you go to Manville now, and those kids treat each other with respect the way I was brought up, and the way we were probably mostly all brought up in this room. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you. I understand that there are race-based incidents around this community and around the state and around the country, which divide more than they unify. And I also know that my perspective is limited, just like every single person across this world's perspective is limited. This year on the school board, I recognized that, and I put together a team that we called our RED Committee, Racism, Equity, and Diversity Committee. I didn't appoint myself to serve on it, but I put together a group of people that represented all walks of life from across our community, all colors, creeds, sexualities, all marginalized groups, so that we could use them as a sounding board for policy, for decision-making, for activities, for functions, for changes that we needed, because we knew that we don't have a global perspective, and it's a matter of leaning on everyone. No matter who you are, your perspective is limited to your experience, and we need to rely on others to give us a more full view of the blind spots that we have in our life. So, to say that we're limited is just not true. We are only limited by the people and the resources on which we lean. And I have done a great job over the past career, really putting together a group that represents all walks of life and relying on them for resources and information and perspective that I otherwise wouldn't have if I didn't think globally outside of just myself. Thank you.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. Thanks for asking this question. Racial diversity, or diversity in general, whether it's gender diversity or sexuality diversity, is not something that we do because it's politically correct. We do it because we get better outcomes. We do it because it's fair and the equitable thing to do. When you get people together that have different perspectives, that have different experiences, you get more richness to problem solving than you typically get. That is the ultimate value. We need to be rewarding that. We need to be encouraging that. When I was a freshman 4 years ago, joining the assembly, I was proud to say that more than 60% of those in the freshman class in the Democratic Party were either people of color or women. A huge shift from historic where it has been. We have programs in place to help those that want to get engaged in government, particularly women and people of color, to rise up. And there are training programs and ways to get engaged, because it starts at a younger age. And we have to encourage it and have to make a more welcoming environment. We get better outcomes based upon bringing everyone to the table.
Does anyone wish rebuttal, extra comments? I'm going to take a question that came online. The previous ones have been from those in the audience. It will go first to Mr. Lukac. The state of New Jersey has about $4 billion left from the federally funded American Rescue Plan. What would be your priorities for the use of that money?
Well, thank you again. $4 billion, it's a lot of money when there's quite a few people in this state suffering and trying to struggle to get through their day every day. Keep the roof over their head, decide whether they're going to pay their mortgage this week or feed their kids, their family, or get their kids the shoes they need. I think it's time that someone in this state goes down to Trenton and thinks about every single resident in this state, not special interests, not pork and fat in the budget. That's not going to help every single working family in this state. This needs to be put back into the people's pockets. It needs to help people. It needs to help small businesses that have been decimated first by the pandemic, and now in most parts around here, especially in my town, during a flood, a disaster from Ida. We have to start helping our people. We got to give them a little lift up so they can make it and succeed in life. Because if every single working family is working and succeeding in this state's going to become one of the greatest states in this country. Right now, they're struggling. I'm out there every day. Every year I've run, no matter what I run for, I go to every single door. And I get an answer from everybody knows that in this room that's a politician. You go to somebody's door, they're going to tell you the truth. They won't say it in a public meeting. And I'm there to defend those people, and I will take their voice down to Trenton and get this thing done for them.
Thank you. Mr. Panico.
Great question. Thank you for that. I could tell you the things that I would do are the exact things that our current legislature and Roy Fryman aren't doing. We can start with the $9 billion loan that we took out about a year ago today. Non-callable. We couldn't pay it back early. We had a $4 billion surplus. We had a $9 billion debt. We couldn't put our surplus to our debt service. That's ridiculous. It is poor fiscal management. What I would do is I'd put it towards the very question that you opened with, education. How do we support our future better in a way other than education? That's where we can use that funding. We can use it towards infrastructure. Roads, bridges, highways, tunnels, buses, transportation, connectivity, electricity. These are all things that are a desperate need here in New Jersey right now. We don't need the pork that the Democratic majority and Roy Fryman continue to spend money on. We need real solutions, we need smart fiscal planning, and we need problem solving for New Jersey residents. I don't need it on special interests. I don't need it for a marina or a golf course or an art museum. That's not what our budget is for. That's not what the $4 billion in surplus is for. But when you elect Roy Fryman, or if you elect Roy Fryman, and if you elect Sadaf Jaffer, it will continue to go to that. You need to elect conservatives who will spend that money to support you. Thank you.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. So let's take a look at that. It was actually over $6 billion that we received from the federal government. It's broken down into 50% can be spent in year one, 25% in year two, and 25% in year three. So that's the structure of how the money. The key to taking a look at how to spend it is to recognize that these are one time. This is a large lump sum that's coming in. So to take a look at programs that you can do, not creating long-term burdens associated with it, not starting a program, but making sure that you have funding enough to support it. Very specifically, I have already put out there that we should spend a significant portion of this to reinvigorate the unemployment trust fund. Unemployment for all people who have employees, we're looking at a 3-year raise over the unemployment tax because of all the people that are on unemployment. I think this would be a way this is a good utilization of that money to reinvigorate that fund. We also should put it into infrastructure projects. Clearly, we've come out of this storm recognizing that we need better storm management. We need to recognize our environment. We need to invest in our education. We have roadways and bridges that have been ignored for decades that need that. And I'm very pleased to say, while I would like to use it for debt reduction, the money is prohibited for that. The one-time projects is really what makes sense.
Dr. Jaffer.
Thank you. So building upon Assemblyman Fryman's comments in terms of infrastructure, I think obviously since we're emerging from a public health crisis, investing in our public health infrastructure is crucial, and assuring that we have equitable access to vaccines and to other care across the board, regardless of people's economic status or racial background. We also should invest in our transportation and make sure that we have ways for people to get to work, that we're investing in our innovation economy and creating green jobs so that we have a recovery that keeps the climate crisis in mind. And that is not even to get into continuing the small business grants that I know that the Assembly has been already providing, and then emergency aid like food aid and housing that so many people are in need of right now, especially in light of the storms. Thank you.
Anyone wish to rebut?
I would.
30 seconds.
I just want to clarify, my opponent said something about borrowing $9 billion. That's an inaccurate statement. There was an authorization to borrow $9 billion. What was borrowed was $3.7 billion at 2%. And therefore, and it is non-callable, which means that we're paying off much higher loans. It's like if you had a very low interest rate loan, you'd pay off your higher ones first. And that is the approach we're doing with the debt reduction that I was the author of, paying off nearly $4 billion of those bonds.
Anyone else?
And then we
Mr.
sit here,
Panico, 30 seconds.
we talk about one-time projects, but we refer to the unemployment trust fund. I can assure you that unemployment, especially under Roy Fryman, is not going to be one time for folks who own and work for small businesses in New Jersey. Over the last year, 1/3 of small businesses in New Jersey closed. Those folks needed unemployment. Unemployment is not a one-time thing. We can't talk about using one-time money for something that's sustainable like unemployment.
Thank you. The next question will start with Mr. Panico. I'm going to word it just slightly differently.
All right.
If elected, what sort of programs do you think the legislature should do to support our small businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. You know, I'm an MBA. I've run a small business here in New Jersey. I still do. I've worked for small and medium businesses across the state. I know the struggle that they go through. I know the struggle that our small businesses across the state have gone through, not only in the past year, but in the past 4 years. When I think about programs that we need in order to really bolster growth, we need pathways for success, innovation centers. When we think about the new minimum wage, we need to think about payroll supersized deductions so that our truly small business owners, our Main Street, is not affected negatively by these programs we're putting in to benefit our citizens. So really it is a cross-sampling, not only of grants, like Dr. Jaffer referred to, but it's also opportunities for small business owners to succeed. You know, we have tons and tons of sole proprietors and folks who are working for organizations under 5 employees. They need opportunity as well. So when I think about innovation zones where we fund special projects, when I think about opportunities for small businesses in the green space, this is really what's going to change New Jersey. When I think about security, though, from the past 4 years of damaging policy across the state, I have to say we need to get away from that and we need to focus on opportunity for our small businesses and our small business owners.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. So there is bringing in small business and supporting small business, and it's a difficult topic because not all small businesses are the same. Not all small businesses look the same. You might have a vision of Main Street, but it also could be somebody who's running something that's internet-based. And we need to keep that in mind when we're looking to find ways of enabling commerce in general overall. It's a fallacy to just use one broad term. I am very proud of the litany of legislation I've put forth to help small businesses over the past 4 years. During the pandemic, I was the one that sponsored the legislation that enabled the EDA to open up tens of millions, and now it's up to over hundreds of millions of dollars for our small businesses, for recognizing you need to ease regulation and allowing them to be more nimble and support them overall. There's a multitude of things, and it's going to be starting with changing the environment and changing the partnership and facilitating. A simple little thing of one of the bills that we just put forth and put into law is electronic building permits. Easing that process. Something as simple as that drives businesses crazy. And we have to facilitate that so people can do that online rather than taking time out of their incredibly busy schedules. This is partnering with our business community, and I'm very proud of my record. I'm very proud of the support also and recognition coming from the business community of the things that I have done.
Dr. Jaffer.
Thank you. When we had the pandemic that we all faced, as mayor, one of the first things that I did was put together a business task force. And through that task force, we spoke with the business owners, talked to them locally about what they needed. And really, as Assemblyman Fryman said, a lot of it was just navigating processes, making logistical processes easier. They needed to adapt their businesses to the COVID environment, so we waived permits. We worked with them to make sure that it was as seamless of a process as possible. So I would just say that my leadership style is very much an engaged consultative leadership style. So if I do have the honor of being elected, I would certainly put together a focus group and a forum for business owners in this district, in the 16th district, to talk about the specific issues that they're facing, how the state can bring those resources that only the state has to these businesses, how we can have synergies and work together, because maybe everybody doesn't have to do it all on their own. But I think that, ultimately, all of us here agree, I'm sure, that small businesses are the heart of our communities and we have to support them. And it's something that I believe that the Assembly has followed through on in terms of the investments and the focus that they've had on those small businesses. We know it's been a difficult time, but let's keep in mind that we were going through a global pandemic. And I think that we have invested as much as we could, and we will continue to do so to support those businesses that are the heart of our communities. Thank you.
Mr. Lukat.
Thank you. When I first ran for council 5 years ago, I also went to every single small business in Manville. And I said, how would things be changed where it would make it a lot easier for you to do what you do for the community? And the first thing they said was permits. Well, 5 years ago, we already electronic permitted everything in town. Our code enforcement, he could be driving around and get a ping on his iPad that we got him to get over there and inspect, to get a permit. But the second thing they said to me, and this was the one that always stuck in the back of my head, is get the government out of our way and out of our back door. Because as fast as profits are coming in, they're going right out the back door, through over-taxation, through over-regulation. Now that we've been running on this race, and Vinny and I, and Mike himself, we've been out on that trail. We've been to almost every town in this district. And the number one thing the small business owners are saying right now that would help them more than anything is for government to get out of their way and let them do what they do. We do what we do. I'm an electrician. I don't expect somebody to get in my way and tell me that's not an electrician how to do my job. I don't tell small business owners how they can do the best they can do for their business and help the community out every day. Thank you.
Anyone wish further comment?
Yeah, Dr. Jaffer said that if she was elected, she would put together focus groups on small businesses. And I can appreciate that. Focus groups are difficult to run and difficult to do. And the reason why I know that is because we're already doing them. It doesn't matter whether or not I'm elected. I am working for our small businesses today, and I will continue to do that regardless of the outcome in November. I'll give you an example. After the flood in Manville, Saturday, I was off work for the first time because I do have a full-time job. We showed up in downtown Manville. We met with the business owners that we had just met with earlier that week to roll up our sleeves and get to work. We do work for businesses now. We will continue to do it regardless whether or not we get elected.
Thank you. Any other comments? This will go first to Mr. Fryman. After the ravaging storm hit our district a few weeks ago, climate change is at the forefront of everyone's mind. What policies could be implemented to protect our environment and ensure a greener future for the people of the 16th district?
So I thought actually your question was going to go, what do we do to avoid some of the additional storm damage? New Jersey is one of the leaders as it relates to taking steps regarding climate change, building the offshore, commitment to making sure that we have 100% renewable energy, expanding our electric vehicle recharging and incentive programs continuously, looking at changing out our buses to go electric as well. There is not one cause that happened just overnight that caused our climate change. What's going to take is continual effort and a boatload of small initiatives and large initiatives. Small initiatives are building rain gardens to help with stormwater management, making sure that the people that are living in floodplains have the ability with Blue Acres to make a move if they want to make a move. And working on a regional basis. A town such as Manville cannot, unto themselves, prevent storms from hitting them and flooding from hitting them. It has to take place upstream. It has to take place on a regional and a statewide basis. That is the broad approach that we have to take. We did it in the 70s associated with the Clean Water Act, where the federal government came in and helped with large infrastructure and then left it up to municipalities to maintain those clean waterways. We can do it again.
Dr. Jaffer.
Thank you. Certainly, the climate crisis is very frightening for all of us, especially those of us who have young children, and we want to ensure that they live in a world that's safe and that doesn't have wild fluctuations in weather and damage to their lives. So I would, agreeing with my running mate, Assemblyman Fryman, we need to continue the investment in wind energy and diversifying the energy sources that we use, in investing in electric vehicles, in green transportation, and as I mentioned earlier, green jobs, thinking about providing people with the training, the infrastructure, the knowledge, so that the work that they do is working towards a safer and healthier environment. That's very, very crucial because we can't continue on the way that we've been going. And this pandemic actually gives us an opportunity to start afresh, to refocus our senses on the climate crisis. But first of all, we need to acknowledge what's taking place. And I think that leading with facts, with research, with a perspective that is provided by the experts in climate change is something that I would be committed to. And I'm proud to have the endorsement of the League of Conservation Voters, so you can know for sure that the environment is very important to me. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac?
Thank you. In Manville, we've probably been way ahead of the pace on this green, on anything green. We have a sustainable team in Manville that is lights out. I mean, the couple that started our sustainable green team in Manville, they actually give the classes down at the League of Municipalities Convention. We've got rain gardens in Manville. We've got rain barrels in Manville. We've got grant programs for rain barrels so folks can come down, get a rain barrel, pay for it, and they get about 85% of their money back. The Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts volunteered to paint the rain barrels. They look really nice. The one problem I have with the majority down in Trenton right now is every day they take this green environment thing and they say, we're for open space, we're for saving the environment. But yet, with their COA policies, they destroy all the open spaces. In Princeton, they're destroying a piece of land that everybody's in an uproar about, that connects to trails, to nature trails. I like hiking, my son likes hiking, all right? We gotta stop. Manville's biggest problem, and we had a fix for it 12 years ago and 8 years ago. And the federal government came down and said, right in a council meeting, I wasn't on the governing body then, I was in the crowd, they said it's not worth the investment to the government. And a few months later, $1 trillion went to Haiti for a disaster that they had in their land. So $240 million wasn't worth it to save a town here. And I'll tell you what, one last, if I may.
You can do it on the rebuttal.
Sure.
Mr. Panico?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Yes, it was, after the ravaging storm, climate change is at the forefront. What kind of policies would you support to protect our environment and ensure a greener future for the people of the 16th?
Thank you. Let's talk about the ravaging storm. On Wednesday, the storm in Manville, we moved our team into Manville, brought a group of volunteers in, and we started cleaning out basements, helping people move things out of their garage. We didn't say who we were, we didn't go in there to campaign. We walked in there to help our neighbors and our friends. On Saturday of that same week, our opponent showed up with a case of water and a bottle of bleach. They put it down on the table and they started talking to folks in the room. You know what they started talking about? Climate change. Climate change is critically important, but to the 90 people that were in the Red Cross shelter sleeping on cots, what they didn't care about right then was climate change. They wanted to know how they were going to get back in their homes. They wanted to know how they were going to put food on their table. They wanted to know when their next hot shower and hot meal was going to be. Climate change is something we need to discuss, but we need to do it when it's appropriate. We need to do it when the folks that are in Manville are back in their homes. When I think about what we can do individually, though, on an individual level, it's all about green energy. I drive a hybrid. I love my hybrid. It's on the parking lot. Honda Accord. Great car, by the way. I recommend you do it. Do your part. It's difficult, though, because there's so much red tape down in Trenton. We need to break down barriers and allow people to put in things like solar, geothermal wind energy in multi-unit houses. We need to give people opportunity to be green because they will choose that if they can. Right now, we don't have pathways for that for everyday New Jersey citizens.
Rebuttal. Mr. Lukac, did you want to finish your thought?
Yes, if I may. I just wanted to add, and if any of you could have been down there, and I know Vinny, Mike, and a few others were there, you've seen the donations that came in from around the communities and around this state. Manville was worth it to them. So if they were not worth it to the federal government, then shame on them. They should have been here on the ground helping our people out. There's still people sleeping in their cars, living in their cars in our Lost Valley section. Still. And all I get from Trenton and the federal government is, we put it on Facebook. Well, guess what, folks? Those folks don't have their phones anymore or computers because they were lost in the flood because they were evacuating to save their own lives in their basements and their houses.
Mr. Lukac, time. Anyone else wish to use your
Sure.
30 seconds? Yes.
It is disappointing to think that the opponents are politicizing this event. As legislators, what we're doing is we have been working around the clock. We've been setting up in Manville, particularly to help the affected families, coordinating information sessions so people know how to get access to services, working closely and actually pressuring the other agencies to make sure they deliver on housing, actually show up and give them the hotel rooms that they need. These are the things that are taking place.
Anyone else? Mr. Panico, do you wish to say something?
Yeah, look,
30 seconds.
to say that we're politicizing this is a joke. We showed up with no names on our shirts, with no hats that had our logos on them, and we started cleaning out. We're not politicizing this. You want to talk about politicizing this? On Wednesday, after the storm, a week later, there was a table set up in Manville with campaign literature on it. There's a website set up right now with LD16 resources on it that's actually a campaign website. You scroll to the bottom, what does it say? Paid for by Roy Fryman for Assembly. You want to talk about politicizing a natural disaster? That's doing it. Not putting on shoes, jeans, and a t-shirt and going to help people clean out their houses.
Thank you. We ready for the next question? This will go first to Dr. Jaffer. Will you support the unconditional release of all New Jersey residents currently detained by ICE and the closing of all ICE detention centers in our state with the release and not the transfer of the detainee? So it's kind of multiple issues in that question.
Sure. I don't believe in immigrant detention. I think that it is a waste of resources, it terrorizes people, and it punishes them in a way, and it stigmatizes them. It hurts communities, and so yes, I would be in favor of not detaining migrants. I think that there are far better ways for us to process people's documentation. We know that there is no pathway for most people who want to achieve legal documentation status. That needs to be fixed. If we look historically in this country, people, especially those from Europe, were able to just get on a boat, come over here, get off the boat. If they were here for 5 years, they became citizens. The current immigration regime is frankly racist, and many of the procedures and processes are as well. So yes, I'm in favor of ending immigrant detention. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. I'm in favor of ending partial immigration. I mean, these folks that are in there, they're being held, they have to be screened, make sure they're not wanted for anything, a serious crime somewhere in the country or in their own country. You know, there's been a lot of cases where a few slept through that they had, you know, pedophilia charges in their country or even murder in some cases. We have to make sure, we can't just close the doors off. This country was built by immigrants. Nobody was born here and they were the first American here unless you were Native American. It shouldn't be that hard. Talking about politicizing on both ends with this issue, they should start a process. And it has to be a fair process, and it can't be like digging for gold somewhere in Alaska. I mean, set one standard of how to become a citizen in this country. And at that point, you're going to be detained. You're going to be screened for health reasons, okay? My mother had polio when she was a child. She got her vaccination, she's fine, and here I am, or I wouldn't have been here. But certain diseases that we've eradicated in this country have to remain that way. We've eradicated them, and we've made it a better environment to come to from other countries, whoever needs our shelter and our help. But we can't just sit here and open the door and say, everybody go, and we're letting out criminals on the streets, okay? We've all heard both stories of this. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you. The basis of all decisions that I make are founded on two things: opportunity and security. How do we give people the opportunity to have a hand up, not a handout? And how do we give people the security to build a family and establish roots here in New Jersey safely? They're not mutually exclusive, they happen together. And when you look at this issue, they can happen together. We need to give people the opportunity to become US citizens. That's the American dream. To come here, start a business, have a family, grow here in America and New Jersey. What I think we need to do is safely. We need to do it safely. We need to make sure that we are properly screening our immigrants. We do need to make sure we are properly giving them the vetting on their path to citizenship. We do need to make sure that every person who has the opportunity to be here in New Jersey is done so safely.
Mr. Fryman?
I'm not sure I heard the answer to your question yet from my opponents, so let me attempt to offer one. I don't think it's right to pull somebody over and then detain them because of their immigration status. However, we absolutely should be detaining people who are criminals. The definition of immigration status to me is not necessarily criminal. It's criminal, we're talking about felonies, we're talking about violent crimes. No, those people, anyone who commits those, it doesn't matter any status, needs to be detained. That said, I actually agree with some of the points of my opponents of that we do need a fairer, more comprehensive way for citizenship. These are our neighbors. These are the part of our community. These are not violent criminals. There are violent criminals in all walks of life. Just because your immigration status doesn't automatically brand you as a violent criminal. And I reject that notion. So I do not think that I should be detaining people purely because of their status.
Anyone have anything further?
Look,
Rebuttal?
but by no means have we said that we're going to rip people from cars and detain them. By no means have we said that we're going to let out criminals from jails. But what we do need to make sure, though, are folks who are detained in New Jersey are done so safely. And when I think about the women's prison in Clinton, the women there were not safe. Under Roy Fryman's watch and Phil Murphy's watch, they were not safe. So we can't sit here and talk about what's fair and just when we have actions going unchecked by the folk at this end of the table.
If I may.
Yes,
Yes.
30 seconds.
Same thing as my running mate here said. You know, we're not pulling people over and detaining them. You know, my grandparents came here from Slovakia when they were 6. They sat at Ellis Island, they got screened for health reasons, and then they were told where they were going to live and where they were going to work for the first 5 years, and they reported back to their immigration officer. But we also have to have a clear path for our folks, our immigrants that come in. Like I said before, we can't put up a brick wall. Give them one clear path to become citizens.
Are we ready? What would be a forum without a property tax question? A legislative forum without a property tax question. This is one that was submitted online. Very simple, in 90 seconds. And we'll start with Mr. Lukac. How will you address New Jersey's over-reliance on the property tax?
Thank you. Well, I don't need any notes for this one. 5 years ago, I got on the council, and we sat there, and even we worked across aisles with each other, everything, and we said we were going to still honor the 2% tax cap. And we've done that, and we remain to do that from a municipal standpoint. What we've done in Manville is very simple things that we do at home, folks. We took a list of wants and needs, we separated them, and we did the things that the town needed to survive, needed to go forward. The wants are just little side projects that people would like to see, to sometimes over-glorify themselves. Down in Trenton, I just don't, I see a lot of the wants being passed through the budgets, passed through everything that's done down there lately, and the needs are just, you know, shoved off in the corner until somebody's up for re-election or there is an issue down in Trenton with somebody up for re-election. It shouldn't be that way. Let's get this thing back on track. There is just so much, you know, they talked about the surplus money before. Spread that out to keep taxes under control, to stabilize them. You know, don't ever listen to anybody. If somebody tells you they're going to lower your taxes, we all know what the story is with that. You're going to stabilize their taxes. We've done the best we could. We are a 2-square-mile town. We've been one of the most underfunded school districts in this state in the last 25 years. We bought in fire trucks, hired cops, hired employees. Everybody got a raise when they were supposed to, and we still stayed and honored that 2% cap. And I think I want to bring that down to Trenton for every resident in this state. Thank you.
Mr. Panico?
Let me be clear. My history here shows fair and conservative budgeting. Hunterdon Central's gone debt-free as of this month while I was board president. You asked, though, what we would do to balance the budget in New Jersey and get our over-reliance on state money removed. I could tell you I would do what Roy Fryman hasn't done. I'd stand up for my neighbors, I'd stand up for the residents of LD 16, and I'd stand up for taxpayers around the state. When I look at the $11.6 billion increase, it included things like a $4 million golf course in Essex County that Roy Fryman voted for. This year, it included a French art museum at $24 million in Jersey City. It included a $1.5 million marina in Woodbridge. You know what Roy Fryman did? He hid under his desk and he abstained. He wouldn't stand up for you. I would stand up for you. I would cut the fat from the budget. I would get rid of the special interest projects that he won't stand up for.
Mr. Fryman.
The economics in New Jersey need to be addressed on two different approaches. One is being smarter with the dollars. What do you have? And the other one is also then growing your revenues at the same time with economic growth. So let me first talk about being smarter with the dollars. It's a matter of taking down the debt so we're not paying $300 million a year. That's that's what we did this year. It's about providing tax relief that we've done 9 separate tax relief elements in this year's budget, making it more affordable for the middle class. It's also looking at more shared services, rather getting away from the duplication. We're addicted in New Jersey to the local rule and having local control, and it comes at its cost. And we have to take a look at, and some towns have done a very good job at looking at shared services. And that's something we need to expand and keep on encouraging and enabling overall. We also have to look at our environment, business climate, and to grow it. Because you also want to create, it's easy to slash. You can do it indiscriminately. The question is, how do you invest? How do you do both at the same time? And that's the way I think you need to look at that. And I do think there's legitimacy of saying, should we have the same reliance on property taxes for our schools? Because that's predominantly where that property tax comes from. Everyone at this dais knows that. So it's a matter of taking a look at how do we redesign the overall revenue structure and make it more affordability, not based upon property values.
Dr. Jaffer.
So picking up where Assemblyman Fryman left off, the vast majority of that property tax bill does go to our school districts, and our school districts are our pride. As I mentioned, I'm very proud of the fact that we have the #1 public school education system in the country, but that shouldn't necessarily be funded primarily or as heavily through property taxes. Property taxes ultimately are a regressive tax that taxes most people's primary asset that they have. So if we could invest more from the state level and lower that burden on local communities, that would help with the property tax burden. But how do we get to that point? We need, obviously, to work on having good fiscal management, and that's something that I focused on in Montgomery. Under my leadership, Montgomery Township has achieved a AAA credit rating, one of only 5% of municipalities in New Jersey to have that rating. So I also created a Budget and Finance Advisory Committee for members of the public to look over the budget, to give their feedback, and I would certainly want to do something like that for people in the district to look at the state budget as well, to understand it, to give their feedback. I think participatory budgeting is extremely important. So those are, some ideas, some thoughts, but certainly we all can appreciate that property taxes are a burden, and we need to work towards helping the people in our state move past that. Thank you.
Any comments?
Look, our opponents over there talk about investing more on the state level in education. Great, I'm all for it. I've said that 100 times over. They're not doing it. They're doing the opposite. Talk to the people at Flemington-Raritan Regional School District, the K-12 in Flemington-Raritan. Lost $1.9 million while Roy Fryman was in office. This year, he abstained on a $15 million demolition project in Camden. 7.5 years, that school could have been funded at the level it was 4 years ago. Let's not talk about easy to slash and being smart with money when we're cutting from schools and giving to special interest projects.
So let me correct some abuse with the numbers that are being tossed around. Over the past 4 years, our district has seen a 12% increase in school funding for the entire district. And that does not include the $12 million that we received this past year from the federal government for our schools. So when we start talking about slashing and reductions, let's keep perspective. We made the largest investment this year in state history in education. So I reject that notion.
Look,
I'm
LD16.
sorry, you've had a rebuttal.
Okay.
Put it in your closing comments.
Oh, yeah.
This one will go first to Mr. Panico. What specific recommendations do you have for changes, or if you may, perhaps you don't see any need for changes in New Jersey's criminal justice system?
It's a great question. It starts with supporting our police and supporting fair policing across this state. I have cops in the family, I have law enforcement in the family on all levels. I have to say I back our men in blue. I will continue to do that. I said one of my foundational platforms is security. Police and law enforcement help us have security in our everyday lives. What I also think is we need to stop unfunded mandates. I'm sure my running mate will talk about the body camera issues that we have across this state. I support body cameras for police. I support accountability. I absolutely do. But when they come down with unfunded mandates, when they come down as a burden to local property taxpayers, can't support that.
Mr. Fryman, criminal justice system changes.
This is a significant issue that New Jersey must continue to address and must do it aggressively. It's not hard to look at and to see the distinction of those communities that are being disadvantaged by our criminal justice system versus others. It's to take a look at simple things such as marijuana legalization. Marijuana usage across the state has no distinction by communities, by color, by racial background. Yet, those that were arrested and incarcerated were overwhelmingly people of color in racial disparity. The people that get pulled over are overwhelming and get ticketed are overwhelmingly people of color. And it's not because of higher levels of infractions. There is inherently challenges that must be addressed. We have to take a look at how this is a systemic issue, and we need to take a step back and realize that. Because when you take a look at the results, you take a look at the data, it points to nothing else. This is not intentional. This is a systemic issue. And we have to address it that way overall. This is not an anti-police, because I'm very proud to, while my opponent feels he's supported by the police, they actually support me as well in these efforts going forward.
Dr. Jaffer.
Over the past year, we not only experienced the COVID pandemic, but we experienced renewed calls for racial justice. And this is something that I saw as mayor of Montgomery Township. The heartbreaking murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and far too many others wakened our national consciousness and made us feel like we needed to see a change. And that change has to happen in every state, in every community in this country. And I'm very proud of the work that we did in Montgomery Township in partnership with our police leadership as well as members of the Black community. We were able to facilitate a meeting where members of the Black community could talk to our police leadership about their concerns, about their fears, about how to build trust, how to build communication. And we need those efforts to happen statewide, and they have been. I participated in many workshops and panels that were organized specifically by the Attorney General's office last year, and I saw the progress that was being made to make sure that we are, as equitable as possible. I learned about the fact that New Jersey has outlawed many of those chokeholds and things that are the most cruel that were being done in other states, but we need to keep progressing in that direction. We need to keep going in the right direction. And that can only happen if we work in partnership with our communities, particularly those communities that experience the worst forms of racism, as well as our police leadership. So certainly, we do need to see change, and I'm proud to be a part of that in the past, and I hope to continue to be a part of that positive change in the future. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac.
Thank you. My dad, he was in law enforcement for 25 years. My stepfather's cousin was the chief of police of Manville for about 8 to 10 years, and he passed away suddenly of a heart attack. I'm all for the body cameras. Like my running mate says, love it. It protects both sides of this whole issue. It really does. It takes liability away from townships, and it protects the person that is being incarcerated. The problem is, we were given the money to buy the cameras by the state. And that's $68,000, excuse me. What we weren't given, and in Manville's tight system and with the 189 flood buyouts we just have survived through before this disaster, is the $300,000 plus a year cloud coverage for the body cams. You could implement all these great tools for the cops, and I'm not saying every cop's perfect. They're not. My dad used to say, every group has a bad apple in it. My union, we're not all perfect electricians. Every group has a bad apple. So don't punish every single person that's a part of that group. My dad was fair and just his whole life, and so were his family members that were police. I know a lot, I've seen police, things that happen on TV, but in New Jersey, our police are pretty darn good. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I would go to bat for every single cop just about in this state. What I won't do is go after them because of one bad apple. That one bad apple has to be incarcerated, they should go to jail, and training should be given to police so it doesn't happen again. Let's learn from our mistakes, not try to cover them up by defunding things. Thank you.
Anyone wish?
Yeah,
an
let's
extra 30
address,
seconds?
let's address saying that police support our opponents. To be clear, the police labor union supports the opponents, the same way the teachers union supports the opponents. You go talk to the rank and file, they support us. We have endorsements from police officers, we have endorsements from teachers. We don't have the endorsements of the teachers union or the police officers union because we're doing what's right for the people. Second thing, we need to touch on education very, very quickly. We talked about a 13% increase across the district. That's true. Roy Fryman did get 13% increase across the district. 99% of that increase went to 2 schools across the 16 that are in this LD 16 district.
Anyone else? Hold it, please. Anyone else? I'm looking at the time, and what I'm going to take as a last question is, and I will be starting with Mr. Fryman. What committees, if elected, what committees, what area would you hope to be assigned to, and why? In other words, looking to what you feel are your strengths or where your passion is or where your knowledge is, and knowing that, of course, you don't control that, but
No.
if elected, you don't control that, but
We do not control our committee assignments. So I'm currently fortunate to serve on the Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee, the Transportation Committee, and I'm vice chair of the State and Local Committee. Your question is a hypothetical one of, if I had the ability to choose, there is the Business and Economic Development Committee is something that I believe fits within my background, within my passion. I'd very much like to continue to serve on the Financial Institutions and Insurance Committee because that too, I have skill set associated with it. A Budget Committee, and very much I enjoy working with the state and local government because that's ultimately where we want to make sure we're getting our services down to and making sure that we're connected and seeing what's working, what's not working overall. So if I had my wish list, that would be on my wish list.
Dr. Jaffer, what areas would be your wish list?
I would certainly like to focus on public health. I think that the experience that I had leading a municipality during the pandemic really opened my eyes to the level of coordination that's needed to make sure that people get the services that they need, to make sure that people get the information they need. There can be so much confusion when people are getting information from different sources. Something that I also focused on in my role as mayor was to really ask for disaggregated data. And what we learned when we disaggregated that data was the fact that COVID was disproportionately impacting minority communities across our county, but also even in Montgomery Township, which came as a shock to some people, but it was important to know. And then we got a vulnerable populations outreach coordinator to make sure that we were reaching people, communicating with them in a language that they could understand, making them feel safe. So those are all things I would like to focus on. I also have an interest in maternal health care based on my own childbirth experience and things that I think could be better for women in this state. We really do need to focus on women's health care in New Jersey and be at the forefront of safeguarding women's health care when so many states are actually cutting back on it. So those are some of my passions that I would like to focus on in the Assembly. Thank you.
Mr. Lukac?
Thank you. Coming from an organized labor background with the construction trades unions, I'd really enjoy being a part of the labor committee down there. And, not just because it's easy for me, because I'm in organized labor, but the construction trades unions, the work we've done over the last 35 years has benefited more or less your average working folks, not union members. We've made things better. We've made it a safer environment by enforcing OSHA standards. Another committee I'd like to be on is public health as well. I agree. Everything was in disarray during this pandemic, and it seems like nobody down in Trenton had a what if this happens plan, and if they did, then I guess nobody followed it, because it doesn't seem like it to me, or in this country, by the way. But, and the other one would be infrastructure and transportation. Honestly, as a combat engineer, we built bridges, and unfortunately, we had to blow them up in some cases. But, it's really a passion of mine to our state, every 1 in 12 bridges in this state is deficient. And it's been far too long, and we've got to get some things going here before we have really major catastrophes happen in this state with bridges and roads. We have to improve. If people are paying one of the highest property taxes in this country, they should have a brand new nice road and bridge to drive over. Thank you.
Mr. Panico?
Thank you. Great question. I've made it clear here, I'm passionate in my experiences in education. Education is what I want to do. It's our future. It's what allows people to excel within New Jersey. It's that opportunity that I've talked about so much. I would love to be on the Education Committee. Mr. Lukac referenced the Infrastructure and Transportation Committee. By all means, it's something I would love to do. I speak about it often, how infrastructure is critically important as well. And we're not just talking about roads and bridges and tunnels like you spoke about, Joe. We're talking about connectivity, electricity, the things that everyday New Jerseyans need to survive in 2021. The other thing I'd really like to be on is the Business and Economic Development Committee. When I think about the business climate here in New Jersey, I look at it as ranked last in the country. We need a jumpstart. We need legislators that are going to represent us that actually do something. Legislators who understand small business in New Jersey. Legislators who, quite frankly, care, because we don't have that right now.
I'm going to take closing comments at this point. The candidates have 90 seconds. Again, they drew for the order, and Mr. Lukac will go first.
Thank you. Once again, everyone, thank you for coming tonight. I hope this was enjoyable, being out in a nice group for the first time in probably a long time. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters. I'd like to thank Mr. Fryman and Ms. Jaffer for coming tonight and being a part of this debate with us. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you, the citizens, even at home on TV or on the internet, that took time to be a part of this debate and watch it and try to get educated in the system. As I stated earlier, like I said, I come from a hardworking family. I know what it's like. You can't just sit at your table. We got to stop this whole thing where people are figuring out feed their kids or pay their mortgage. Do we buy a car or do we walk and not feed the kids? It shouldn't be that way. This country's too darn great for that. I've proven during my time on the Manville Borough Council that I can work across the aisle to get things done and what is best for our residents, not friends or special interests. I have also stood up quite a few times, as anyone could study Manville, they'll see. I stood up to my own party when I thought the rights of our citizens were in danger, or their well-being was in danger, or something wasn't just right for them. I will give you my word, as I've done before to our residents in Manville time and time again, I'll be there for you. I'll defend your rights, your freedoms, like I did when I took an oath to serve this country in the Army, and the well-being to the best of my abilities. I will also take your struggles and battles to Trenton, and I hope to get down there and clear the sludge from the pipes of progress once and for all and get us moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Mr. Fryman.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for attending. Thank you for coordinating this. To my opponents, I also want to thank my opponents for mentioning my name probably 16 times. I appreciate
You're
that. I've been proud to serve the past 4 years in the legislature and serving alongside Andrew Zwicker, who I now look forward to serving with him as he moves into the Senate. I'm also very excited to be serving the next 2 years with Untitled Chapter in representing you. Tonight you're hearing different sides, you're hearing different approaches, different styles, those thoughtful approaches. The advantage you have is we have, and I have, a track record. And I would ask you to look at that track record versus promises and thoughts and ideas of what they may do. And it's because of my track record that I've been able to garner an incredible amount of support behind my campaign. Support that has come from first responders, fire, police, nurses, doctors. Support that has come from educators. Supports that have come from environmentalists, from conservationists, from women's organizations. And support that has come from the business community that have honoring me 2 separate organizations of Legislator of the Year because of the work and how I'm fighting for New Jersey. This has been an incredible honor to serve, and I am very much asking for your support because I'd like to continue the good work that we have done over the past number of years. Thank you.
Mr. Panico.
Thank you for that. I'm excited and honored to be up here. I appreciate the support that I've received thus far. When I think about track records, there are 2 opposing points. I can think about the track record of New Jersey having the highest outmigration over the last 4 years. I can think about New Jersey having the nation's highest or worst business climate. I can think about New Jersey failing in COVID and being the world's highest per capita death rate. I can think about 60% increases in municipal projects. Or I can think about the track records of myself. Settle the budget. Negotiated with the teachers across the aisle to settle the contract for the first time before it expired. Eliminated debt. Protected our staff and students from COVID through strong policies. 100 and Central was not the highest in the country or the globe in per capita death like New Jersey was. And when I think about what I'm going to do when I head down to Trenton, it's very easy. I'm going to stand up for you. I'm not going to hide under my desk like a coward. I'm not going to abstain on votes that are important. I'm going to stand up for you and protect you because I represent New Jersey, I care about New Jersey, and I'm part of New Jersey. Thank you.
Dr. Jaffer.
As 2-term mayor of Montgomery Township, I focused on building trust within the community through increased engagement with residents. This community-led approach enabled my administration to create and implement a robust crisis communications plan, which helped Montgomery Township maintain low COVID-19 infection and fatality rates. I also launched a youth leadership council to elevate the voices of young people who are energized to lead. My background as a researcher at Princeton University prepares me to address complex policy issues in a research-based manner. We as a nation are emerging from a traumatic COVID-19 pandemic. At this difficult time, we need elected officials who are able to cope with emergency situations, bring people together for the common good, and heal our wounds to move forward in a positive direction. Despite the challenges we face, I run for office because I'm an optimist at heart. I run for office for my 7-year-old daughter who deserves a state government that represents her, and for all my neighbors who deserve values-driven elected officials. I'm excited about the opportunity to serve LD 16 and be part of our district and our state's continued progress. Thank you.
Now it's appropriate to clap for all of the candidates. Thank you for your participation. And I want to thank the candidates for sharing their positions on the issues raised this evening. I want to quickly again thank our sponsors, Montgomery News and Princeton TV. The forum will be rebroadcast on Princeton TV, which is Comcast Channel 30 or Verizon Fios Channel 45. Thanks to the Raritan Valley Community College student government because they provided this space for us and they provided our timekeeper. And also to the 2 local League of Women Voters, the Princeton area and Somerset Hunterdon, for organizing. A recording will go on the League's vote411.org site, where you can look up candidates' response, and also on the League of Women Voters of Princeton .org site. Remember, you have 3 ways to vote. You can request a vote by mail ballot from your county clerk, and you can return that voted ballot by mail in a ballot drop box or by returning it directly to your Board of Elections. This year we have early voting on voting machines available in a limited number of sites in each county between Saturday, October 23rd and Sunday, October 31st. And if you're not voting by mail or don't plan to vote early, obviously, we hope you're going to be voting on Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd, at your polling place between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. The 16th Legislative District covers 4 counties, so to find all the details, go to your own county clerk or Board of Elections website, or you can go to vote.nj.gov, finding out where everything is located. So thank you again, and thank you to the candidates. I really appreciate everyone's time.